Hello from Chicago, Illinois. This is the pre-departure orientation for Greenheart Exchange's Teach USA program. We're so excited to have you here and joining us on the program. Thank you so much for choosing Greenheart. Let's get started. So here's a quick overview of today's orientation. We wanted to welcome you to Greenheart Exchange's Teach USA program. As a teacher, you're sure to have many rewarding experiences. The J1 Bridge USA Teach Her program helps to foster the development of new international friendships and cross-cultural understanding. We hope that you will make the most of your experience here in the U.S. And in order to have these meaningful experiences and a successful program, there is a good deal of important information that you need to know. So we have tried to provide as much of it as we can in this orientation. Here's a brief overview of some of the topics that we will be discussing today. We'll go over a little bit about the Teach USA program, about what is expected of you before you even arrive to the US and what you need to do then. The check-in requirements once you arrive to the US, CCAs, schools, and transfers. We'll talk a little bit about what each of those items are. Social Security and taxes, which are a little bit unique to the US. Living and working in the US. US customs, culture, and laws. Safety. And then we'll talk about the Greenheart Club and other items as well. So about the Teach USA program. What is the purpose of Teach USA? What role does Greenheart Exchange play in your program? And what do your program fees actually cover? So the J1 Teacher Exchange program is a Department of State program under the J1 visa. It allows teachers such as yourselves to come to the U.S. on a J1 visa for 1 to 3 years to teach in U.S. schools. There's also an optional 2-year extension, which is regulated by the Department of State. As you know, teachers on the J1 Teach program have to be certified, experienced, and of course, high quality foreign teachers to teach here. You are, as teachers on the program, required to organize 2 cross-cultural activities per academic year. We'll talk more about that later. As I said, it's one of the J1 Bridge USA cultural exchange programs, and the important thing to take from that is that it is not a work visa. The purpose of the program is for you to gain experience in the United States and to learn about its culture and to take that experience that you have while you are here and take it home with you and share it with your family and friends at home as well. And while you're here to share your culture and your experiences from your home country with the people in the United States that you get to meet. So Greenheart Exchange is one of many sponsor organizations that is designated by the Department of State to facilitate placements and to run the Teach USA program. The purpose of the Teach USA program is to promote interaction between U.S. and foreign teachers and to enhance understanding between the people of the U.S. and the teachers or your home countries. The program also aims to sharpen teachers' professional skills and to share their cultures in schools and communities, to increase international teacher knowledge of the U.S. and the U.S. educational system. So what is the role of Greenheart Exchange in all of this? So Greenheart Exchange is your visa sponsor, and we are experts in facilitating cultural and professional exchange programs. We're the only nonprofit green J1 visa sponsor, and we pride ourselves on enabling stakeholders to work together on projects that promote environmentalism, sustainability, and diplomacy. As a program participant, You can contact Greenheart Exchange 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you have an emergency, as we provide emergency support all day, every day, through our emergency line, and then during office hours if you have a non-emergency question or concern that you want to talk to us about. And we ensure all stakeholders, that means teachers and schools, are compliant with Department of State program regulations. And that's our responsibility, and we take it very seriously. So your program fees generally are paid to Greenheart Exchange. Generally are paid to Greenheart Exchange, and they are paid on an annual or yearly basis in March through April. So program fees are paid on an annual basis, and we have a program renewal process that we go through, and that you'll go through we'll notify you about it in February generally, and then the process will go through until April or May. You are responsible for ensuring that your program fees are paid. An invoice will be issued after you request your new program or your program renewal. And for a list of potential fees, review the participant fee transparency agreement in the participant handbook. And if you ever have any questions about your fees, please feel free to contact Greenheart Exchange. So what is and is not included in your program fees? Included in your program fee is J1 visa sponsorship, which comes in the form of a DS 2019 form issued by Greenheart Exchange. This virtual pre-departure orientation, a 24-hour, as I mentioned before, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on-program support for emergencies, and then during our office hours, which are 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday, you can contact us if you have any other questions or concerns. We also provide Department of State compliant evacuation insurance and Department of State compliant supplemental health insurance coverage through Point Comfort Underwriters. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you are able to opt out of that if you choose. And vetted placements in accredited or recognized U.S. host schools. So some things that are not included in your program fees are things such as your visa interview or reciprocity fee. There is a non-refundable SEVIS fee that you probably have already paid. Housing and related costs, so anything related to your housing, those costs are your responsibility and are not part of your program fees. Meals, travel costs, like your flight to the U.S., any connecting or independent domestic U.S. flights you might take, transportation to and from the airport, either in your home country or in the U.S., public transportation, those kinds of things. If you choose to have us mail you through the U.S. Post System a new DS form because yours was lost or stolen or something like that, the replacement DS 2019 form, the shipping costs specifically are not covered by your program fees, and then any fees that you might need to pay in order to gain your state teaching license. Those are your responsibility and are not included as part of the program fees. So at the link there at the link below is a full list of potential fees. These are just some of the fees and the ones that we wanted to make sure we're clear on what was and was not covered by your program fees. So you agreed to Greenheart Exchange's terms and conditions when you applied for the program. The terms and conditions is available online. If you would like a link to access the terms and conditions again, please contact us and we're happy to send that out to you. You agreed to all the terms and conditions and participant handbook, which includes our policies and procedures for all of the below, but not limited to the below. So that means everything, all of these, but not just these. Anything that's listed in there is also included. But things like your check-in requirements, your program placement, housing, money and finances, application requirements and processing, and the cultural component. Greenheart Exchange will do our best to remind and guide you through the program requirements. However, ignorance of or not knowing the requirements is not a valid excuse. If you don't know or if you are not sure, please ask Greenheart Exchange. We are here to assist you and to answer your questions. So pre-departure, this is the part of where you are currently at. What should you do before traveling to the US? What do you need to do to prepare properly for your program? So the most important thing is communicate with Greenheart Exchange. Let us know the date of your visa interview, the results of your visa interview, when you plan to arrive to the United States, when your school is planning to start, and any changes to your arrival or to the date that you plan to start teaching at your school. You will receive emails from Greenheart asking you to report this information. It's very important that you click on the links and provide the emails or provide the information or respond to the emails, because failure to promptly provide this information will negatively impact your program before it even begins. So we want you to have a successful program, and communicating with us even before you come to the US is vital in order to have that successful program. So at the airport, you want to make sure that you have some documents with you, and these are documents that you should have either on your person or in your carry-on luggage. These documents should not be in any luggage that you check. So especially if you gate check one of your carry-on luggage pieces, make sure that you have these documents with you, and they are not located in your gate checked bag. So it includes your valid passport that has your J1 visa in it, your DS 2019 form, and the signed offer letter from your host school. It's also important, I know that papers tend to get raggedy and sometimes people want to laminate. Please do not laminate or alter your original documents, especially the DS 2019 form, because that will make the form invalid. And throughout your program, these are important documents, so it's important to keep them in a secure place the entire time you are on program. We do recommend that you make multiple copies of these documents, including your J1 visa page, as well as your the biographical page in your passport, your offer letter, your DS 2019 form. All of these, we recommend that you print and make multiple copies, and keep them in a safe but separate space in case your originals are lost or stolen. The copies can be helpful in getting a new passport, and helpful in making sure that you have all of the information you need from your DS 2019 form. If for any reason your documents go missing or are stolen, please contact Greenheart Exchange right away, and we're happy to help you work on getting replacement documents or forms. So J2 dependents, I know many teachers want to bring their spouse or their children. So we just wanted to quickly touch on Greenheart Exchange's policies about J2 dependents. So Greenheart Exchange, when can your J2s join you? Greenheart Exchange knows that often our teachers are eager to have their J2 participants join them. But we do generally require participants to be on program for at least 3 months before bringing their J2 dependents over. We do make some exceptions to that rule, and that includes if you are a single parent of a child under 5 years old, if you're a mother of a child under 5 years old, or if both parents of the child or children are on the J1 program. Can J2 spouses work while in the U.S.? So they can, and they can apply for an I-765 from the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service, and they need to obtain that employment authorization. However, this is completely outside of Greenheart Exchange's control and is something that generally the J1 and J2 participants do independently of Greenheart Exchange. There are financial requirements for bringing J2s over. So the Department of State has specific income requirements per J2 dependent, depending on if that J2 dependent is a spouse or a child. And Greenheart Exchange will share these J2 requirements with you when you request your J2 application. J2s also are charged an annual program fee, and these must be paid at the same time as your program fee, as your renewal program fee each year. And J2 fees are based on the year that their DS 2019 is issued. It's not based on their arrival date. Okay, so you've gone through, you've reported, and you're here, and you get to the United States. When do you need to check in with Greenheart Exchange? So there are various check-in requirements throughout most of your program, and you should receive emails to remind you about most of these events. So the first check-in that you will have is that you need to check in with Greenheart Exchange within 3 days after your arrival. And then you will need to check in with Greenheart 7 days after your DS 2019 start date. And then there are mandatory monthly check-ins every 30 days while you're on your program. And we email you every month to remind you to do these. It's also very, very important that you communicate any changes to Greenheart Exchange, such as changes to your job, if anything significant, any significant administration changes at your school, life events, or any problems or issues that you might have. Please report anything like that to Greenheart Exchange within 24 hours. You can just send us a quick email, or you can call us during our office hours. And if it's an emergency, you can call our emergency phone line. Remember that Greenheart Exchange is your visa sponsor, and we're responsible for you while you're in the U.S. So you must keep us informed of any situation that might jeopardize you or your visa. And we are here. Your health, safety, and well-being are our top priority. So now we're going to go into each of the check-ins that are listed on the screen here in a little bit more detail to talk about them. Okay, so first is the initial check-in. So Greenheart Exchange requires all participants to check in within 3 days of arrival to the U.S. So that means that from the day that you land, no matter what the time is, if the day that you land in the U.S., that's day 1, and then there's day 2, and then there's day 3. So by that day 3, you need to check in with Greenheart Exchange. You can shoot us an email. There's a link that you'll be sent that you can do your check-in that way, but it's very important. Failure to complete your initial check-in, so failure to check in on time, may lead to your program being terminated, as this initial check-in is a Department of State requirement. So you will receive an email prompting you to complete this check-in, but that email is triggered based on the arrival information you reported to Greenheart Exchange. So if there's any kind of change to your arrival information, then you may not receive the email at the proper time. If you arrive earlier than planned and you didn't update your arrival information in our system, you may not receive the email to remind you, but you are still responsible for checking in. If you arrive later, you may have received the email early, but you're still responsible for making sure that you check in. So please notify Greenheart Exchange if there's any change to your arrival information. by emailing teachusa@greenheart.org. You can also use that email to complete your initial check-in. All teachers should plan to arrive to the United States before October 1st, 2023. Arrivals after October 1st, 2023 will be considered on a case-by-case basis. So next we're going to talk about validations, but first we need to make sure that you know what system you validate your program in, which is called SEVIS. So SEVIS stands for the Student Exchange Visitor Information System. It's the government's tracking system that permits the Department of State to monitor your activity while you are in the U.S. Greenheart Exchange is responsible for monitoring your program, and we are required to update all of your information and make sure that it's up to date in SEVIS. So you must validate your program within 7 days of your DS 2019 start date, even if you're living in temporary housing. That's very important. So what your validation includes is submitting your current U.S. housing address and your current host school address. You should receive an email prompting you to validate your program. But if for some reason you do not receive this email, you should contact Greenheart Exchange, and you can just send us an email at teachusa@greenheart.org. So what happens after you submit this information is that we send this we review it to make sure that it's properly formatted, and we submit this information to SEVIS. And then you will receive an email directly from SEVIS letting you know that you are active. If there's a problem, and we'll go over proper formatting, but if there is a problem with proper formatting, we may follow up with you to ask you to clarify or to update the information. So this is also a very important step that it's important for all of you, everyone, to know that failure to validate your program within 30 days of your DS 2019 start date may put your program at risk. So even if you arrive a day or two late, it's based on the DS 2019 start date that is in SEVIS. And if you arrive late, that's why it's very important for you to communicate with us any changes in your school start date. So we talked about validations, and as I said, you have to submit your U.S. housing address. But I know that U.S. housing addresses can look very different than what you might be used to in your home country. So we wanted to show you what a properly formatted U.S. housing address looks like. So a proper U.S. housing address has a street number, which is in green, has a green box around it, a street name, which has a red box around it. On the next line is generally a unit or a hotel or apartment number, which has that bluish purple box around it. If you live in a house, you may not have a unit number, but if you do live in an apartment, or if you're staying in a hotel or a hostel or something like that, you should let us know the actual unit number that you are staying in. And then the city, which is in that blue box, the state, which is in the green box, and then the zip code. So the zip code is for mailing purposes. If you have any questions about any of this, or you need help figuring out what your zip code is, please feel free to contact Greenheart Exchange. Other good resources for address help would be your landlord, or looking at your lease, or your school is likely going to be able to help you put in a properly formatted address. And then you also need to submit all of this information anytime that you move. So within 24 hours, please email it. You can email us. You do not have to wait until your 30-day check-in to let us know that your CVIS that your housing address has changed. Speaking of your monthly check-ins, you are required to check in with Greenheart Exchange every 30 days throughout your program. So you will receive an email with directions on how to complete your monthly check-in online. It will contain a link and it will ask you to fill out a quick form. In your check-in, please, you have to let us know how your program is going. So is everything going okay at school, or did something happen that we should know about? Was there an incident with a student? Did you have any concerns? Did you have any performance concerns? Anything like that? Please report that kind of thing in your monthly check-in. These check-ins are not just to hear from you that everything's going great on your program. We're here to help you, and so we need you to tell us when you need, if there's something going on, so we can provide you with that help. So we also need you to report your new housing address. If you moved, there's a space for that. Any changes to your host school or position. So if there's a change in principal or there's a major change in the administration, please let us know about that kind of thing. And then any significant life changes or events that occur in the previous 30 days. So if you got married, if you had a baby, anything like that, please let us know. It's very important that Greenheart Exchange know about these things so we can make sure that you continue, so we can make sure that everything is followed up with correctly. So there are some things that you should notify Greenheart Exchange about within 24 hours, and you should not wait until your monthly check-in is due. Some of these things include placement changes. So if you are changing your position or thinking about wanting to change your teaching position at the host school. If you are asked to teach at a host school that that is not listed on your current DS 2019 form, please let Greenheart Exchange know right away. Any change of school administration due to misconduct. So if a school administrator is put on leave or is asked to step down due to some sort of misconduct, please let us know. If you need to take a leave of absence for some reason, please let us know why, and let us know what's going on that you need to take that leave of absence. And work performance or concerns and dismissal from your position. So we want to be able to help you communicate with your school and understand what the expectations are and make sure that those are clear to you before you get to the point that you are dismissed from your program. So it's very important that you report work concerns or work performance concerns or dismiss it as soon as possible. And then personal events, such as if you get married or if you get divorced, if you're hospitalized or have a major injury or illness, if you have any kind of interaction with law enforcement, and then any traumatic events that might happen either in your home, such as a robbery or something like that, or at your school, if there's a lockdown or things like that. Please let us know as soon as possible and report those things to Greenheart Exchange within 24 hours. And then if you're not sure if something should be reported, you can email Greenheart Exchange. You can let us know anyways. We want to know how your program is going. We want to hear from you. And so if you're not sure, just send us a quick email. It doesn't take very long, and we'll be happy to hear from you, and we'll follow up with you and let you know if that was something that we needed to know about. Okay, so CCAs, schools, and transfers. What is a CCA? Where can you work? what if you want to transfer, and can you have a second job? Cross-cultural CCAs stand for cross-cultural activities. And as you may know, you are required to complete 2 cross-cultural activities each academic year. So each year you must complete 1 cross-cultural activity from each category. So there are 2 categories, and you have to complete 1 CCA from each category each year. So the 2 categories are local and international. So the local category what consists of an activity for your classroom, host school, or host district, or the population, so the community around the district, or students in the district, to give an overview of the history, traditions, heritage, culture, economy, educational system, and or other attributes of your home country. So that's what you need. So this is you teaching your community, your students, your school, your fellow teachers about your home culture or home country. Okay? And then that's the local activity. The international activity is an activity that involves U.S. student dialogue with schools or other students in another country, preferably in the teacher's home school, through virtual exchange or other means in order to supplement the goals of the in-person exchange. So what that means is that for the international activity, it's important that your current students, or some of your current students at least, interact with students from maybe one of your previous schools, or maybe a school that you have a teacher friend in, or the school that you taught in before you came. So it's very important that there's direct interaction between your U.S. students and students in a foreign country, preferably your home country, but it does not have to be your home country. If you taught abroad and you have connections in another country, that's okay. It's just important for the international component that there is direct interaction between the 2 sets of students, the U.S. domestic students and the international students, that they have some sort of direct interaction. Oftentimes, this can be through a video chat or video call. It could be via like an email exchange. We've had teachers send like cards that their students made back and forth to one another for different holidays, things like that, some kind of direct interaction. So it's very important that you complete both a local and an international cross-cultural activity every academic year. Failure to complete one activity from each category will negatively impact your program, and that we may not be able to renew your program for the next year, as this is a Department of State requirement. If you do have any questions about an activity or which category your activity idea might fall under, or just about the cross-cultural activity requirements in general, please feel free to email teachusa@greenheart.org, and we're happy to provide you with additional guidance. So you will receive cross-cultural activity email reminders and directions on how to submit your CCAs online. So there will be a link, and you can submit all of your CCAs via that link. You can submit your CCAs at any time throughout the academic year, but both cross-cultural activities need to be completed and submitted to Greenheart Exchange by April 1st. That allows us time to review them and give you some feedback, hopefully before the end of the year. So if you have to redo one of them, that you have that opportunity. So when you report your cross-cultural activity, each activity must include the following information. We need to know the date of the activity. So when did you do the activity? the location or where did you have the activity, the audience and audience for and participants in the activity. So that generally is, was it an activity that you did for your students? Was it a school-wide activity? How many people participated in the activity? The more details you can provide us about that, the better. A general overview of the activity. So what did you do? What topics were covered? What did the students talk about? What was the theme? The estimated impact of the activity. So again, how many people learned about your country by your presenting about your traditions to the school? How many people were there? How many students were involved? For the international activity, it will ask how many US students and how many international students. It doesn't have to be the same number, but we do need to know that number. And then a photo or screenshot from the activity. So we love seeing the photos of our teachers doing cross-cultural activities. So please feel free to submit more than one photo, but you do need to submit at least one photo for your CCA, for each CCA. And if you have that Zoom call between your students and international students, it can be a screenshot of the two of them talking, or a picture with some of the students on the screen and some students in person, something like that. So after you submit it, submit your CCAs, Greenheart Exchange may follow up with you via email about your activity if it is missing information or if it does not fit in the reported category. So if you report that it's a local activity and it seems more like maybe it's an international activity, or if it seems more to be an international activity and you reported that it was a local activity, we may follow up with you. Or if you're missing things from some of the information that we discussed from your activity. It's important that you respond promptly and pay attention to your email throughout your program, because failure to complete 2 qualifying CCAs per academic year, as we've talked about, may impact your ability to renew or extend your program. CCAs are required by the Department of State, and so failure to complete your cross-cultural activities can have a negative impact on your program as a whole. So cross-cultural activities are a really important aspect of your program. And so please give some thought and maybe start talking with your school at your home country about how you might be able to connect with them, the school where you taught in your home country, about how you might be able to connect with them to complete that, especially that international activity. So that's all there is about cross-cultural activities. Now we'd like to talk about schools and transfers. So school approvals. So it's very important for you to know that you may only work at a school that has been fully vetted and approved by Greenheart Exchange. If you are assigned to a school other than the one specifically listed on your DS 2019 form, even if it's within the same district, you need to contact Greenheart Exchange immediately. So if you are supposed to work at elementary school A, but your district says, could you work at elementary school B? You need to contact Greenheart Exchange immediately to let us know that they've asked you to move schools. There's a map, and we'll show the map later, as well as approval guidelines for schools if for some reason you ever need to transfer. Schools that do not meet the criteria in the guidelines generally will not be approved, and that means that you would not be able to work there. All of the schools that you're currently placed in have gone through this vetting all of the schools that you're initially placed in, so that are on your current DS 2019 forms, have been properly vetted and gone through, and so they do meet these approval guidelines, and they are in states where Greenheart Exchange does work. So sometimes things change and you may want to transfer schools or change schools throughout your program. Transfer requests are considered on a case-by-case basis. Mid-school year transfer requests may be granted only if there is a serious health, safety, or welfare concern. Transfers between schools between academic years are also subject to approval, but those are also reviewed on a case-by-case basis. You can contact Greenheart Exchange at teachusa@greenheart.org if you have any additional questions. If you do have any trouble or concerns about your school placement, please talk with your supervisor. If you need help doing that, if you're not comfortable for some reason talking with your supervisor, that's okay. Or if you're not sure how to talk with them, that's okay too. Please let us know, and we're happy to help you have that conversation with your supervisor to make sure that you are having a great program. So it's also important to know that as a J1 teacher, Department of State regulations do not allow you to have a second job while on the program. This includes teaching or tutoring over the summer at a location or for an organization other than the school listed on your DS 2019 form. So if there's a tutoring group or something that teaches at your school, you're not allowed to teaches at your school during the summertime. You are not allowed. Second jobs are not allowed on the J1 teacher program. So this is a map of places where teachers through Greenheart Exchange can be placed in public and private, just private, or that we don't generally place teachers. And we will send you a copy of this map if you ever ask us for guidance about school approvals. And then here's the one pager that we have about the approval process for teachers, so you can understand what to look for and what questions to ask your school about in order to ensure that your new school, if you wish, would be approved. So how do you apply for Social Security, and what taxes are you going to have to pay while you're in the United States? So in order to work in the U.S., in order to work in the United States on your program, you will need to apply for a Social Security card, like the one pictured. So first, you'll have to find a local Social Security office. And then you'll need to call them and talk to them and ask them what documents do you need to bring in order to apply for Social Security. Generally, for J1 participants, you will need to take 2 copies of your passport. Remember, we talked about making multiple copies of things like your passport. 2 copies of your J1 visa, 2 copies of your DS 2019 form, 2 copies of your I-94 card, which you can print off from the I-94 website. And if you need help accessing that, please let Greenheart Exchange know. As well as 2 copies of your signed offer letter from your host school. So it's very important that when you're filling out, especially your Social Security application, that you make sure that the name that you put on your Social Security application matches the name that is listed in your passport. It's also important that as much as possible, the information listed on your DS form and visa and all of that match it. But it's most important that your Social Security application name matches your passport name. There's additional information about Social Security and applying for Social Security in the handbook, but if you do run into any questions or have any concerns, please feel free to contact Greenheart Exchange. So there's some information that you should know about Social Security even before you apply. So you should be active in SEVIS for at least 10 days. Remember, you become active in SEVIS by validating your program. So once you receive that email from SEVIS letting you know that you are now active in SEVIS, count 10 days out, and that's the earliest you can apply for Social Security. After you supply, and we recommend that you call the Social Security office to see not only what documents do they require, but also if they require you to make an appointment or if you can just go in. When you apply for Social Security, you will be given a receipt acknowledging that you applied. You must give your host school a copy of this receipt for their records. You should be able to start teaching and working before then and be able to be paid before then, but it's very important that you provide your host school with a receipt once that you applied for Social Security. And you should keep the original and they should get a copy of the receipt. So Social Security cards can take some time in order to be issued and mailed to you. It can take up to 8 weeks. So if you haven't received your card within 8 weeks of applying, you should call the Social Security office where you applied. And there may be an issue with the shipping. They can check to see if it's been mailed out to you. Or there may be an issue with your application that you weren't aware of. But generally, the Social Security office will communicate with you via mail. After you receive your Social Security number, you will need to give this number to your employer, so to your host school or to the HR department. You should provide a copy to the host school as well, or to the district human resources department. Your Social Security number is a private number. You should not generally share it with everyone. There are only certain institutions such as banks, your employer, occasionally medical institutions, things like that, that places like that require you to share your Social Security number, but it's generally a number that you should keep private and not share with absolutely everyone. As I said before, as a Teach USA participant, you may begin working, and your host school can pay you before you receive your Social Security card or Social Security number. If your host school has any questions or concerns, or if for some reason they aren't paying you, please either contact Greenheart Exchange yourself or have them contact us directly. And we'll be happy to kind of go over things and explain and make sure that they understand that it's important for you to get paid and to receive your paychecks. If at any point during the process you have any kind of a problem, please contact Greenheart Exchange. So because you'll have a Social Security number, it's important, and you are required to pay U.S. taxes and some U.S. taxes. So often during onboarding, you will be asked to fill out a W-4 before you start teaching. This is a common tax form that is included in the onboarding process. The form simply tells your host school how much taxes to take out of your check during each period. Unfortunately, the W-4 is designed for resident U.S. workers, and since you are a non-resident U.S. alien, you do have to fill out the form a little bit differently. So the taxes you should expect to pay are local taxes. That includes county level taxes potentially, state taxes, as well as federal taxes. But there are some taxes that you are not required to pay, such as Social Security and Medicare. If you notice that these are being taken out of your check, please contact your HR. Please contact your HR department. There's also more information about taxes in the participant handbook, and you can always contact Greenheart Exchange. It's important to note, though, that Greenheart Exchange is not the staff at Greenheart Exchange are not tax professionals, and so if you need help filing your taxes, we can refer you to Specific places that can help you file your taxes is a J1. However, we are not staffed by tax professionals, and so we cannot give you tax guidance on how to fill out tax forms. So, living and working in the U.S., what should you consider when you're choosing your housing? What if you can't find housing before you arrive? And what about health insurance or insurance in general? So these are things that we're going to talk about next. Housing is an important aspect of the Teach USA program. We do expect that you're going to live in safe, reliable, and affordable housing at a location where you're able to safely get yourself to and from work or to and from your school. As I've said before, your health, safety, and well-being is our top priority. So if you ever feel unsafe or unsure in your housing hunt, please contact Greenheart Exchange right away so that we can assist you. So here are some tips on when you're doing your housing search in the US. Make sure that you check via Google Maps or Bing Maps or check online for directions so that you know the distance between your housing and your school. Is this a reasonable distance that you're able to travel every day, that you're willing to travel every day? If you're planning on walking to and from school, does this look like a safe area where you can walk at night? Can you walk alone? Is there transportation available to and from work? Public transportation in the US is not, it might be can be a little tricky to navigate. So do your homework and make sure you research to see what public transportation options there are. So is there public transportation available to and from work? Is it bikeable? Can you bike from your school to your home? Are daily taxis and ride shares an option? Daily taxis and ride shares can be costly. And so is that something that you can afford? Make sure that you know how much each month you're going to be paid. And so make sure that you kind of look at and make a monthly budget and make sure you budget for that kind of thing. And don't forget that you need to be able to go other places, such as the grocery store. Does your housing have laundry? And if not, where is a laundromat that you can do your laundry at? Do you have access to urgent cares or other medical services, such as such as pharmacies or things like that, and other necessities? Do you know how you're going to be able to get there and get to these places? And finally, are you able to afford your housing? So in the US, there are often hidden costs behind the cost of rent. So things like transportation costs to and from work, like we talked about, utilities, personal items such as toiletry, linens, kitchenware. Is your housing furnished? Or are you going to have to buy additional furniture in order to live in your housing? These are all things to consider and keep in mind when you're looking at housing options in the US. And if you need assistance, please contact Greenheart Exchange, or your host school might be able to assist you as well. So living in the US, temporary housing. So like we just talked about, there are a lot of things to consider before choosing your housing. And so you may decide that you want to arrive to the US and find housing once you're here. That may be an easier option for you. So you may live in temporary housing for the first couple weeks of your program, and that's fine. It's just important for you to remember to validate your program, even if you're living in temporary housing. Even if you're staying in a hotel, please let us know you need to validate your program, even in temporary housing. So when you're looking for temporary housing, it's important to consider transportation to and from work, but it's also important that you remember to make a reservation. So you should not arrive and just expect that there's going to be availability for weeks on end. make a reservation and talk to the temporary housing provider before your arrival. Research where the housing is located. Make sure you can get to and from your school. Talk to your school for guidance on where to look in the area. Hostels and hotels are a great option for temporary housing. The Youth Hostel Association runs an online booking service, so you can pre-book your nights. Many hotels and homestays also allow you to pre-book your nights. So make sure that you do your research and have some sort of housing arranged for the first few weeks of your arrival if you don't have permanent housing already planned. So there are a lot of expenses when you come to live in the U.S. and we just want to make sure that everyone is coming to the U.S. with a plan and with an understanding of what to expect. So we want you to be able to plan your trip and enjoy your program without financial stress. So some common expenses that you may incur include housing, like we just talked about, including the security deposit, which sometimes can be the first and last month's rent, utilities such as heat, gas, and electric, high-speed internet so that you can talk with your family and friends at home, public transportation or transportation in general to and from work, meals, spending money to do fun things like go to museums or have those cultural experiences that we want to hear about in every check-in, travel insurance, and then medical coverage outside of your DS 2019 start program dates, or just general medical coverage if you enroll in your school's medical plan. So insurance in the U.S., as you've probably heard in the news, can be very complicated and tricky. So as a Teach USA participant, Greenheart Exchange will provide you with supplemental health and evacuation insurance, which complies with the Department of State regulations, unless you choose to opt out of that insurance. We'll talk about that at the end of this slide. So these regulations state that J1 teachers insurance must meet the following guidelines. So they must have medical benefits of at least $100,000 per accident or illness, repatriation of remains in the amount of $25,000, coverage for expenses associated with the medical evacuation of an exchange visitor to their home country in the amount of at least $50,000. So those middle two are covered in your repatriation and emergency evacuation insurance. And then deductibles that do not exceed $500 per accident or illness. While Greenheart Exchange is happy to provide supplemental insurance meeting these criteria, we do strongly recommend that participants enroll in their host school's health insurance plan as well. The insurance that's provided to you by your host school will provide better general coverage and will be more widely accepted and generally easier to use in your area. Greenheart Exchange provides the supplemental policy simply to ensure that participants' insurance complies with the Department of State regulations. So you can find out more about the provided coverage through Point Comfort Underwriters and download your insurance for the Point Comfort Greenheart provided insurance through the Student Zone. If you enroll in, and we do strongly recommend that you do enroll in your school's health insurance plan, you would be provided with a different insurance card for that plan. So if you are enrolled in both plans, you should run the insurance through provide the provider first with your school's insurance card, and then if something is not covered by your school's insurance, then you can submit a claim to the supplemental health insurance that may or may not cover it. It's very important that you always carry your insurance card with you. So if you're enrolled in both plans, we would recommend that you carry both insurance cards with you. So some of you may choose to opt out of the supplemental health insurance. And in order to do that, you must submit proof of enrollment in a DOS compliant insurance plan to Greenheart Exchange. So we will keep you enrolled in the supplemental provided health insurance until proof of other insurance is reviewed and approved. And it's at that point that we will let unenroll you from the insurance. But it's very important that we make sure that you are compliant with the program, and so it is your responsibility to submit the documentation needed to prove that you are enrolled in a compliant plan. So while the student zone has information specifically about the supplemental health insurance, but it also has important information that can be accessed by anyone, whether or not you have the supplemental health insurance, about insurance and laws in the U.S. So we strongly recommend that you watch these videos at that link. And there are videos about the U.S. healthcare system, about mental health awareness, as that's a big topic in the U.S., sexual assault awareness, drug and alcohol awareness, and transportation safety. So those last three, the sexual assault awareness, drug and alcohol awareness, and transportation safety, those three videos are aimed more at university students. However, the information does apply to everyone in the U.S., and we do think that it's important information to share with you, even though you may be older than the targeted age group that the videos were created for. So as a J1 teacher, as a participant on the J1 teacher program, you have many responsibilities, but it's important that you know that that your school and host district also have responsibilities. So they are expected to honor the terms of your contract. They are expected to provide you with a clean and safe working environment. Provide you with both a W-4, which is that form that you fill out during your onboarding with the school, as well as a W-2 form, which is what you are issued when in January or February, in late January, February, or March of the next year. So the U.S. tax year is a calendar year, and then you receive your W-2 form with the information about what taxes you've paid, and you use that W-2 form to file your taxes. And your school is required to issue you a W-2 form. And then your school must provide an atmosphere for cultural exchange. So it's important that they're open to you sharing your culture and talking about it. It is an exchange program, so we want you to feel welcome in the school. And you should feel like you're learning about the U.S. culture, but they should also be open to learning about your home culture. So we do encourage you to remain in contact, and it's very important that you remain in contact with your host school before you arrive to the U.S. You can do that via phone or email, whatever the established communication is, but we do strongly recommend that you communicate with them. Your employer's contact information, including their phone, the primary contact's phone and email address, should be listed on your job offer. So please reach out to your host school at least 1 week before your arrival to the U.S., but it's important that you communicate with them as well as Greenheart Exchange about when you plan to arrive and what your arrival plans are. So as I mentioned, I apologize. So as I mentioned, the U.S. tax year is a calendar year. That means it runs from January until December. So the tax form that you are issued by your school in order to complete your taxes is issued at the end of January each year. So it's important, especially if you leave a school and you transfer schools, that you leave your contact information so they can send you your W-2 form. So so that you can fill out your taxes properly with both your new school's W-2 form as well as the W-2 form from your old school, because you did receive income from them. So you should provide your complete contact information, which includes your full name, your home address, your phone number, and your email address. So as a reminder, again, you are not eligible to work at a second job during this program. So that means you should only be working at the school district, at the school that you are approved to work at during the academic year and during the summer. So what should you expect from people in the US? How can you succeed in the US workplace? And then what are your rights in the US? Or do you have rights? We'll talk about that next. Customs and traditions in the US may seem unusual to you, and many aspects of US culture will be different from in your home country. So space, personal space is different in many countries. So observe others around you. Give people a comfortable distance when you're standing in line or having a conversation. Don't be on top of people or stand right next to people. Time. In the US, time is treated as a commodity. Sometimes it may seem like everyone in the US is in a rush. Waiters may hurry you and people may push past you. Do not take this personally. This is just the way things go in the US sometimes. Greetings. People in the US, both men and women, may shake hands when meeting. It's unusual for people to kiss hello unless they know each other well. Hugs are common and less personal than a kiss, but be careful in initiating physical contact until you see how others are behaving. Work. In most work environments in the US, people are on a first name basis, which can be uncomfortable for people from some countries. People may also work long hours in the US with a work hard, play hard attitude. Colleagues may go out together after work to socialize. And then identification. It is customary to always have an ID on you, especially to enter a bar, but leave your passport at home, just carry a copy. Remember to keep it in a safe place and have that copy on you so you have it. Other acceptable IDs might be if you get a US driver's license, that may be an ID that may be the ID that you carry around. So you can also check out the participant handbook for more information about life and customs in the US. So teaching in the US may be very different from what you're used to in your home country or wherever you've taught before. So we have some advice on what to expect when working in the US. Be prepared. So before you even come, learn about classroom management strategies and expectations in the US before you arrive to the US. Your school may have their own expectations and standards, so that might be something that you should ask them about before you even arrive, so you can start studying and learning about what those expectations are. Ask questions. If you don't know how to do something or you do not understand, ask your supervisor, a mentor, or a colleague or a coworker for more information. Asking questions is encouraged, especially in educational institutions. If you do not ask, people will assume that you know and understand. And advocate for yourself. You need to be your own advocate. Speak up for what you need at your school, but do so in a professional manner. If you have a problem or a concern, speak with your direct supervisor about it in a professional way. And always be professional. Always keep your interactions with staff, faculty, parents, and students professional. Ask students age-appropriate questions and avoid too much physical contact with your students. So there are some things that you should never do with any of your students when you're communicating and interacting with them. So never make or accept sexual or romantic invitations from a student. You should never date, students or solicit dates from students, no matter their age. Never engage in sexualized dialogue with a student. For example, saying things like, "You look sexy today." That's not something that is appropriate to say to a student in the United States. Do not make suggestive comments to or about students, even in private or to your colleagues outside of the student's hearing. Do not expose students either in person or through photographs to genitalia or sexual images. That will just don't do that. Do not share a sexual or erotic experience with a student. Do not exchange gifts with students that have no educational purposes. So you can give for educational purposes, like if you're giving gifts to the whole class, that's one thing, but giving one specific student many gifts individually for non-educational purposes, that can cross a line and be a red flag and potentially cause problems. So doing any of these may lead to suspension, dismissal from your teaching position, or also could get you into legal trouble or be the basis for criminal charges. So it's very important that you do not do anything that is listed on this current slide. So the slide before were things to never do. Generally, you should try to avoid being alone with a student. So if a student is alone in your classroom with you, leave the door propped open. That's something that's very common to have happen. Leave the door propped open or have the conversation in a public space. Make sure it's clear that or if you have to have the door closed, make sure that you can see someone can look in and see what you and the student are doing alone in the room. Generally, don't have intimate or close contact with students. Corporal punishment or physical contact in order to enforce discipline is not allowed in the U.S., especially not in schools. So contact your school or your school administrator for guidance on how you are allowed to enforce the rules. And do not encourage students to have crushes or romantic interests in you. These are things that you should generally avoid doing. Again, they could lead to some of the things on the slide before. And those could lead to legal problems for you or your dismissal. So if something does happen and you do find yourself interacting with either law enforcement or the judicial system, you are entitled to all the legal rights that U.S. nationals have in the judicial system while you are here. So that includes that you have the right to remain silent and to refuse to answer any questions if you choose. You are not required to answer questions if you do not wish to. No person accused of a crime may be forced to confess or give evidence against themselves. You do not have to incriminate yourself. You have the right to be represented by a lawyer, and if you can't afford a lawyer, you have the right to be provided a lawyer for free. You are entitled to be released from jail upon posting bond or money to ensure that you will report for trial. But that bond is set by the court. You are entitled to a fair trial conducted according to all the rules of evidence and court procedures of the state, county, and city that you preside in, or that is presiding over your trial. And you are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. You do not have to prove your innocence. Rather, the prosecution must prove you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So those are important things to know at any time that you are interacting with law enforcement, such as the police, or the judicial system, such as judges or during a jury trial. So you are subject to all laws and regulations in the U.S., even though you are not a citizen. It's important to know that ignorance of the law is not an excuse for not following the law. If you are involved in illegal activities and found guilty, you may serve jail time or be deported without the hope of entering the U.S. again in the future. So to help you avoid getting into trouble, here are some things to keep in mind where the U.S. might be different from your home country. So you are not allowed to drink alcohol in the U.S. if you are under 21 years old. No, this also goes for any J2 dependents that you might bring with you, such as your spouse. So if you are 21 and your spouse is not 21, you may drink in the U.S., but your spouse may not. Marijuana and cannabis is illegal under federal law and in many states. So there are many states that have various levels of legalization of cannabis, but it's important to know that under federal law, marijuana and cannabis is illegal, and you may not smoke or consume marijuana or cannabis, according to the federal law. You should never drive a car while intoxicated. You are not allowed to drive a car if you do not have a valid license or car insurance. Car driver insurance is separate from health insurance in the United States. And so if you're injured in a car accident, it's likely going to be the car insurance covering your health care as opposed to the health insurance. So you must have a valid license and accurate and active insurance on the car or for you when driving a vehicle. Do not take materials from your host school for your personal or private use. Even if it seems like the host school is not using the items any longer, this could be considered stealing. So if you have any questions, it's important that you ask your administrator or principal for clarification or permission about what you can and cannot take or what you may or may not use for personal purposes. And then finally, it's important that you return to your home country no later than 30 days after the end date on your DS 2019 form, or after your program, if your program is shortened, within 30 days of your program being shortened. In the case that your program is shortened, Greenheart Exchange will remind you of this requirement. So, safety. How can you stay safe in the United States? So I know many of you will want to travel while you're in the U.S. The U.S. is a big country, and we want participants to be able to travel, especially during the summertime when maybe you don't have school. One of the things that you can do is go on vacation and travel and see different parts of the United States. So when you're doing this, there are some things that you can do to stay safe during your trip. So travel with friends or family whenever possible, so don't travel by yourself. If you're riding a bicycle or a moped or a motorcycle, wear a helmet. In some cities and states, helmets for motorcycles might be optional, but Greenheart Exchange would encourage you to always wear a helmet when we're riding any kind of bicycle, moped, or motorcycle. Take a map or do your homework and plan ahead. Research hotels and hostels and transportation, especially if you're traveling for more than one day. Make reservations like we talked about. Always tell friends and coworkers where you are going and when you will be back so they know when to expect you, and they can raise the alarm if something happens and you're not there. Take your important Greenheart Exchange Teach USA documents with you. So make sure you take copies of your passport, your J1 visa, your DS 2019 form. Take the phone numbers of your friends with you and give them your phone number so you can communicate with them. If you are delayed, you can let them know what's going on, and possibly they ask them if they could help. Make sure that you lock up your valuables and important documents. So there's often safes in hotel rooms in the U.S. So make sure you lock up your documents or keep them on your person. And then remember never to hitchhike. Hitchhiking in the U.S. is not considered safe, and you should never hitchhike. It is not allowed. So if you do have an emergency, we hope that you have a safe and uneventful program while you're in the U.S. But you will be here for for several years probably, and so emergencies might happen. So the emergency number in the U.S. is 911. So if you need if you need firefighters, if you need the police, or if you need an ambulance, the number to call is 911. And generally you should call 911. Some areas may have 911 where you can text, but this is not available in all areas, and so it's best that you call 911 and speak with the operator. The 911 operator, as I said, can send police, firefighters, or an ambulance to assist you. And it's important that when you call 911 that you follow the directions of the 911 operator at the time when they give you. So whatever the 911 operator says to do, they follow their directions. If you somehow, for some reason, accidentally call 911 and you did not mean to, please stay on the line and explain what happened. Do not simply hang up. It's important because otherwise they may send the firefighters or the ambulance or the police to your location anyways. So all wireless phones, even those that are not subscribed to or supported by a specific carrier, can call 911. So 911 is something that can be called for free from pretty much any phone that you may have access to. So it is crucial, in fact, that you review your school's employee handbook and take note of the school's safety policies during emergencies. School safety is a big topic and a big issue in the United States, and teachers are expected to know the policies and procedures that their school or school district has set up in order to respond to emergencies such as fires, natural disasters like earthquakes, tornadoes, or hurricanes, as well as potential active shooter or lockdown situations. As a teacher, you are responsible for the safety of your students and for yourself. So you will be expected to know exactly how to react in case of an emergency. Ask your school administrator for the school's emergency procedures and make sure that you're familiar with them. You can find additional resources for handling school emergencies from FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's website. And there's the link. So before we go on, before we go on to the Greenheart Club and more, I want to tell you the secret word. The secret word, you'll be asked for this during the quiz that you'll have to take to show that you learned what we really want you to learn from this presentation, and to show that you paid attention throughout the presentation, and you listened until the end of the presentation. So the secret word is sparkle. That's right, sparkle. So the way that you spell sparkle is S-P-A-R-K-L-E. Sparkle, which is spelled S-P-A-R-K-L-E. So when it asks for the secret word, write sparkle. All right, so here's some information about the Greenheart Club, what it is, and then there are some additional resources. And re-emphasizing some ways that you can contact Greenheart Exchange. So the Greenheart Club, you can, if you do volunteer work or volunteer opportunities, the Greenheart Club is a great way that you can do that. And log your thing, and you can get, there are service grants. You can log your hours. You could be a global service leader. You may be able to get a certificate of achievement. If that's something that you're interested in, you can go to the Greenheart Club and register your service hours. If you're interested in finding places to volunteer, you may want to contact your school, as they may be aware of different organizations in your area where you can volunteer and help out your community, your host community. So you can contact us in a variety of ways. So we have a toll-free line that you can call, and during office hours. So our office is open on Mondays through Fridays, 9 a.m. through 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Central Time is 1 hour behind Eastern Time. So Eastern Time, if you is like New York, DC, Boston, those are all on Eastern Time. We are based in Chicago, which is in the Central Time Zone. There's also the Mountain Time Zone, which is 1 hour behind Central. And then there's also the Pacific Time Zone, which is 1 hour behind the Mountain Time Zone. So there are multiple time zones, and there are multiple time zones in the United States. So 5:30 your time may not be 5:30 our time, or 9 a.m. your time may not be 9 a.m. our time. So please check to see what the time difference is between where you are placed and the Central Time Zone, and see if you're in the same time zone or what time it is. There are multiple websites that can help you figure that out. So you can always call us. The 1-888-440-8750, that's a toll-free number that you can use to call our office. Toll-free means you can call it for free from any phone. And so you can call us during our office hours and talk to us. You can always email us at teachusa@greenheart.org. You can go to greenheartexchange.org. And then we also have an emergency hotline, which is that 24-hour-a-day phone that will be answered, that's always answered. And you can call that at 1-800-293-7288. Please note the emergency hotline is only in cases of a serious emergency, such as a threat to your health, safety, or well-being. So if you call for a reason that's not considered an emergency, or that could or should wait until the next business day, our team will let you know that. But please call in the emergency line only in case of a serious emergency. If you do have an emergency, such as a health emergency, or if there's something going on at your house, call 911 first and get to a point where you feel safe or you're taken care of. Maybe the emergency responders have gone home from your home, have left your home or something like that, and then that's when you should contact Greenheart Exchange. So make sure you contact the emergency response people in your area by calling 911 first for your emergency. If it's a health emergency, or if there's a fire, or if there was a robbery or something like that, call 911 first. And then once the first responders have gone or left, and things have quieted down, collect yourself, and then you can call our emergency phone, and we're happy to be here and help and support you through that. So here are some program resources and some important links to the J1 for during your program. And then we also have some teaching resources that you can review as well. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to having you on the program, and I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to take the online quiz. To take the quiz and report and submit your answers. Please note that it will only allow you to submit the answers if the answers are correct. So if you are not able to submit the answers on your quiz, double check, rewatch part of the presentation, re-review the PowerPoint, and see if you can't identify what part of your answers are incorrect. Thank you and have a great night.